Merry Christmas, everyone. I hope you had a wonderful holiday. Because with the way this year went, everybody fucking needs it. I hope everything was awesome. Zero problems, zero fighting, zero issues. Just you sitting down and chilling if you're single, like I used to be. And just watching a movie. Maybe open something for yourself because you got something for yourself. Or if you have family like I do, watching those kids open everything up. It was truly epic to see them get the unexpected. So, for my Christmas gift to you, I have my notes up right here. We're going to have a little fun with this wonderful book. Let me bring my notes over here so that I don't lose my place. I'm going to blow them up because, well, I'm not wearing my glasses, so fuck y'all. This wonderful book, Chapter 1. I promised it a while back. We're going to get into it. The introduction is by the foreword, Angela Harris. I read that to you already once. Richard DeGallo and Jean Stefancic. Stefancic, I guess? I don't know. This little primer, actually the first chapter was really short, to be honest. So, to give you an idea of how short this thing is, let me find... Oh, that's chapter 2. Chapter 1 is actually a whole whopping 18 pages. It's not that big, but it is chock full of what the fuckery. So, this whole section right here, here you go. This is all I'm going to talk about for now. Chapter 2 has been equally entertaining, I must say. But let's dive into it, shall we? Because I did promise this, and let's just do it. So, the first thing they do, they have in this section right in the front here, oh, that's the foreword. My bad. A preface to the third edition, which I skipped because it was talking about stupid things. An introduction. They have an italicized section. It's about a page, well, 2.5 pages long. And in this italicized section, they level set the mind. They set everything straight. They make sure that you're in the mindset of critical race theory. It's important to put yourself in there, in the zone. You need to be in the zone to be able to understand this shit. So, intro to the first chapter, they teach you to see everything, literally everything, along racial lines. It asks about sights. Let's say you're walking down the street and you notice somebody just kind of scoffed at you, didn't look at you in the eyes. Or you go to the grocery store and the clerk's just scanning their shit, getting their job done, and they didn't say thank you. But they did to the person before you, but not to you. The grocer ignored the passerby or gives you an awkward glance. The third one was the salesman treats you poorly. He treats you kind of like a douche. They even give you reasons why this might happen. Say the grocer's just having a bad day. The salesperson is an asshole. He's trying to sell a car. And you went in there maybe not looking as presentable, not a suit and tie, somebody that probably can't afford this car. You know what I mean? And, to be honest, all salespeople in the car industry are kind of like that. They look for the guy that'll probably be able to buy that car like that. And then the third one, the passerby that gives you an awkward glance. He could just be having a bad day. He could think, he may have, or she may have a lot on their mind and just don't want to deal with nobody. And they give you a weird glance because, why? People give me weird glances all the time. Look at my face. It's understandable. But they give you those excuses. But then they say, but could it be because you're black? Of course, this book, Critical Race Theory, is written for black people and black people alone. If a white person reads this, clearly they're not talking about, they didn't give you that awkward glance because you're white. They didn't give you that stone cold silence at the grocery store because you're white. No. The salesman didn't treat you poorly because you're white. No, you have to be a person of color, POC, POC. You have to be a POC.
What do you have to say?
And they assume everyone that gave you that awkward glance, that gave you the weird silence, that treated you like a douchebag, clearly they were white, right? Because the grocery store clerk is definitely going to be white. And here's the thing. They do this on purpose. This is a way to build confirmation bias. And it's a logical trap. Because then what happens if you're taking this seriously? Like, you dive into this thinking, you know what, I'm going to see something, and I wonder if it says something about it. They put you in the mindset to make you think through your history and pick out all the pieces. And your mind will do this naturally anyways, because that's the way your pattern-seeking brain works. And it starts putting these things together. So yeah, you probably have some instances of a douchebag salesman, and you know what? He probably was white. Why not? The grocery store guy, yeah, he probably was white and was treating you like he's ignoring you. Or she. Why do I keep using he? And the person giving you an awkward glance, walking by, that person was white too if you were not a white person. Does that ever happen in reverse? In my personal experience, hell yes it does, but let's just continue. Of course, before you even step into the understanding of critical race theory, they set you in the mindset of thinking like a racist. You notice everything along racial lines, every slight, every damage. They call them microaggressions, for those that care. Those are examples of microaggressions. You've been aggressed at, microly, because the person ignored your ass, rather than striking up a conversation with the 700th person they've seen today. The salesman treated you poorly. Not because you went in there with busted up jeans, a t-shirt, your hair sideways, and smelling like you haven't bathed in a week. No, it totally was because of your skin color. Totally. If you were to walk in there... Actually, you know what? There was a movie. I can't remember which movie it was, but it was a DMX movie. This is an old one. He goes in and sits in a Porsche, I think it was, a really nice car. And he sits down and he's acting like a douchebag, like a thug. And the black man walks up to him and tries to sell him the car and say, oh, you can't afford this. And he antagonizes him until he changes his tone. And then the white kid with the longer hair tosses him the keys. Says, yeah, here, go try it. He's laughing the whole fucking time. And then finally, the guy throws him a bag full of money, literally, and says, that guy gets the commission. Because the other guy was a douchebag. But he went in there looking like a douchebag. With his friend that also kind of looked like a douche. They look like thugs. They look like street thugs. And he did it on purpose. To illustrate a point. Perception is everything. But I digress. That's an off the topic subject. That's the same kind of thing. They want you to put yourself in the mind of thinking critically and thinking racist at the same time. That way you can go through your history. Maybe you fudge up a few memories along the way, and you forget that the person that actually ignored you was Hispanic. Just pulling a race out of the air. Anyways, the introduction describes a movement apprised of scholars and activists. These scholars were actually law professors and sociologists, and a few psychologists. The psychologists actually at the time of this thing being created were more into feminism, hence where you get toxic masculinity and other shit like that. But I digress, I've already discussed those. And in their own words, they seek to transform the relationship between race, racism, and power. And they focus on civics. They focus on the law. They focus on institutions, as they love to call them. Systemic institutions. They focus on that because they think race needs to be included there. In the introduction, when I covered that in the last video, I talked about how they went to law school, and the law school said race, gender, all that shit means nothing in the law. It is illegal. It is not to be talked about. It's not to be discussed. There is nothing here. If you do something bad, it's because of you. If you do something good, it's because of you. If you're suing someone and that someone wronged you, it's because that person's a douchebag and you deserve, what's the word? Reward? I don't know. You deserve your shit back. Right? That's what, you watch Judge Judy, you can figure that one out easily. Judge Judy's a really good judge of character. Well, they want you to focus on that. The author describes the splinter groups that was focused and perceived on racial injustices.
I am dumbfounded.
They include things with not being able to understand people with heavy accents, sports mascots being offensive to someone somewhere, and Muslims being discriminated against after, as Ilhan Omar put it, some people did something that one time on 9/11. Yeah. People being discriminated against after they bomb us and run 2 planes, actually 3. Everyone remembers the Twin Towers. Not everyone remembers the Pentagon was also hit. That place got trashed. And the 4th one was headed for the Capitol. But that one got shot down. But also the people on the plane took it back over. They just didn't know how to fly it, didn't know how to use the communications equipment, didn't know how to do shit. So they crashed. Well, they got shot down. A lot of people died. It was horrible. They state that they each have their own body of literature for each section. For heavy accents, that's intersectional. They use that quite a bit in this book, about the intersections between feminism and race, the intersections between Muslims and race. See, Muslims aren't a race, that's a religion. They forget that there are ginger Muslims, and I find it pretty interesting that they turn Muslim into a race in this book. It makes no goddamn sense, but let's play their little games for a little while. They write about the body of knowledge that's been created. And I'm reminded of what Helen Pluckrose, James Lindsay, and Peter Boghossian did and published, where they basically did the same thing that I kind of understood they were doing, that most poor scholars do. That's why they're not scholars. They're actually just activists at that point. I peer review on occasion for a journal. And every once in a while you'll see it come through where somebody will start with a conclusion and they'll work backwards to prove said conclusion. Now that's not scholarship. That's trash. That's activism. That's trying to prove your opinion. And if you think like this book does in the critical race theory, you will be able to prove your opinion because there's a lot of anecdotal evidence that you can just pluck and grab, and you basically don't take a sample size and try to figure something out. No, you mold that sample size into what you want it to look like to prove your point. And that's exactly what those I forget what they called themselves, the SJW papers. That's exactly what they did. They started with a conclusion and worked backwards. So if you can think of something, actually, Sargon did a great video about this where he was pointing out the satirist predicted the future because they would write an article about it eventually. And what the person did was just follow the train of thought of a critical race theorist or critical theorist in general and just assert something. Eventually they'll write an article about it, proving their point through evidence. Anecdote. The plural of anecdote is not evidence, by the way. And that's how they roll. So these scholars, if you're not familiar with them, they wrote how male dogs promote rape culture and the conceptual penis and its problematic nature. And my personal favorite, it is still my favorite today, is that they took a chapter of Mein Kampf from Hitler, the greatest evil on on Earth, according to literally everyone. They forget Stalin and Mao, who killed more. But those guys clearly are not as evil as Hitler, because Hitler actually tried to invade other people. That's why they hate him so much. All they did was replace the hating Jews in Mein Kampf in this particular chapter and replaced it with feminist buzzwords like male fragility and white male and all that other shit, and it published into their scholarly journals. These scholars were so great to do this. It's just amazing that they passed as legit. In section B, we get to the origins of critical race theory. It began in the 1970s, well after MLK and his great statements that everybody assumedly forgot, because apparently it wasn't as profound as it needed to be. Many people, according to the authors, decided that civics were being rolled back despite the Civil Rights Amendment, the rolling back of Jim Crow, and the multiple other things made illegal like redlining, discrimination for hiring practices, discrimination for college entry, which actually is back in a fervor if you pay attention to their EEOC and approval rating. We need only certain. They do racial quotas. That they do racial quotas. It's pathetic. It's rather pathetic. Ivy League schools having racial quotas is the epitome of we're not racist but racist.
How dare you insult me like this? Insolent fool!
To quote, critical legal studies and radical feminism, to both which owes a large debt. They give credit to two distinctive movements in this statement. Those radical feminism and critical legal studies. When they put critical in there, they're implying that legal, the decisions that have been made, they lack race. In fact, there was an article just recently that I read where a judge decided to pull down all the white pictures of white males out of his courtroom because he had a black defendant that happened to be stepping through, and just to make him a little bit more comfortable, making sure that he doesn't think it's all about race when he throws the book at him, I guess. In other words, he wanted to be racist while he was being racist, and then not to subjugate the racism of racists' opinion on somebody else, he removed the white people, which was racist. Makes wonderful sense in the minds of these fucking fanatics.
Enough. Don't ever try to flatter me or you'll be sorry. I don't like it.
So there was overcompensation in their practices. People were getting into colleges where they didn't have the scores because systemic racism now. You got to blame the system rather than the failures of the individual. No, never mind that you've created a culture that celebrates criminal behavior, smoking weed, which I really actually don't have a problem with, shooting guns, selling drugs, drinking until noon, not having a job, trying to be a poet, even though you didn't know it. Yeah, all that was right up front. The radical feminism, critical race theory, also plays the idea that patriarchy is a real thing. So in critical race theory, they attempt to remove the black male from the equation because patriarchy is also a problem within every racial society. And of course, the power dynamics of men who oppress women magically, somehow, even though, everyone's empowered to be their best, we definitely have to pick up women because we want to empower them, although picking them up isn't empowering. If we're not there, they can't do shit. Do you not get that? It's like, imagine a person with a broken leg. Instead of using their crutch and saying, I'll move on my own, they lean on you. They hold your arm. They put their arm around you to hold themselves up with their broken leg. What happens when you're not there to hold them up? Can they walk? Or do they need to find another crutch to hold them up? That's what their type of empowerment means. It's not empowerment. It's subjugation. Willful subjugation. Because now you're immediately and always going to be the crutch for someone who can't walk on their own. It's better to teach that person or mend their wounds or help them. In the case of the broken leg, it's better to build a crutch for them and help them mend their wound so they can walk on their own, rather than being their crutch for life. But anyways, this is all within the first 5 pages. I told you this thing was only 20 pages long in the first chapter, and all of this was contained within the first 5 pages. Isn't that amazing? But you know what? We're not done there. Let's continue. There's an interesting point. They evolved the racist movement is to infect the other aspects of thought and study. We need racism everywhere, essentially, is what they're trying to say. You needed racism in civics. You needed racism in STEM. Engineering needs more racism. Math, math is discriminatory. 2 plus 2 equals black people suck, apparently. According to critical race theory, that math just, it needs to be corrected to 2 plus 2 equals 5 now, because you need to include more people in the equation, and if you don't add it right, then you're not being diverse enough or some shit. It's very interesting. But to quote the specific thing here, philosophers incorporated critical race ideas into analyzing issues such as viewpoint discrimination and whether Western philosophy is inherently white in its orientation, value, and method of reasoning. Inherently white. So, never mind the thoughts of Martin Luther King saying, I want to be judged by the content of my character instead of the color of my skin. That thought there is Western philosophy because he was a part of the Western ideals and he was subjugated to Western schooling and teaching. Therefore, that thought there was inherently white. That's their reasoning for ignoring good advice. Give you another example. One of my favorite things is the Allegory of the Cave. I love that philosophy behind there. Everybody's seeing shadows, only one guy gets out. That person comes back and says, hey dude, this is all shadows, and everybody beats his ass because he's a liar, even though he's telling the truth. That's white. It was Greek. It's over like 4,000 years old, but it's white. Why? Because it's a part of the Western modern philosophy. Inherently white. If that statement alone doesn't scream racism from racist assholes, you need help. If you're taking a philosophy, any philosophy, take the philosophy of one of the Aesop's fables. Tell a lie long enough, no one will believe you. You know, the boy who cried wolf, as they called it? The boy sat there and cried, wolf, wolf, wolf. Everybody showed up, pitchforks and guns and whatever. No wolf. He did it again. Everybody showed up, oh my God, no wolf. He did it again, and there was a wolf that time. Nobody showed up. And now he's dead. That is a great fable of why you shouldn't lie all the time. And why nobody at this point, it's the same philosophy behind the Smollett effect. You tell a lie long enough, eventually nobody believes you. He was beaten up by 2 Nigerian princes, trying to give them his wealth so that he could help them come to America. Clearly, he was a part of that Nigerian prince scheme. That's why, he claimed 2 white people beat him up and put a noose around his neck. Or some such bullshit. Everybody knew he was fucking lying. But that type of philosophy, saying that you should not do that you shouldn't lie to the world and then get caught in that lie, that's white. That's white thought. It's white philosophy. According to this book right here, that is white philosophy. That is a white thought. Can you believe the racist shit that's in this book already? I haven't even finished chapter 1 yet. Isn't that great?
Oh my God, I deserve this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Seeing everything through a racial lens, in case your thoughts are probably racist to begin with. This author's, they're racist. They're flat out racist. To write everything in the racial lens, thinking that matters, thinking that's important, is racist to me. You're discriminating based on race. Discrimination based on race. That's how I define racism. If you're trying to divide lines using race as the divider, you're probably racist. Just saying. I don't even do this superiority, inferiority anymore, because they have changed the... God, my nose itches. They have changed the meaning of racism so much that that's what it means to me now. I'm just going to define it the way I want to. Racism is discrimination based on race.
That's right. You fools! I said so, and I'm right.
Anyways, now that they primed us in the first 5 pages on what the big problem is, clearly race is a problem everywhere. They've outlined it, philosophy, in law, in systems of oppression, all that shit. They give us the tenets. The tenets that will outline everything. Tenet number 1, racism is ordinary. It is not aberrational. What do they mean by this? It means that racism would be acceptable everywhere if it's ordinary. Everything's racist all the time. Reminds me of Vanita Sarkeesian when she got up on that stage. Everybody's sexist, everybody's racist, and everybody's trash, and we have to point that out. And everybody cheered because everyone in that room was probably racist and sexist. Because no, that's not true. They take the extraordinary and try to make it ordinary. When you believe everything is racist, you will see racism everywhere. I was in a discussion not too long ago about a book, and the book was called Moral Politics. And it is an atrocious book where a liberal writes and says that their values are more ethical. But here's the values of conservatives from their lens. It gets a little bit of it wrong. That's only because this person is unable to see things from a conservative lens. They are incapable of empathy, as it were. In this discussion, and it was a roundtable discussion, about 20 people, I mentioned I didn't vote for Hillary. And that was when Hillary and Trump were running against each other. This one chick in the corner says, "Why didn't you vote for her? Was it because she's a woman?" Somebody took control of the conversation and quickly shifted. I was like, but I got my comment out. It's like, why would you ever ask that? And I stand by that. Hillary is trash. It's not because she's a woman. It's because she's a crazy, vindictive, evil bitch that has stolen millions from this country, that has sold millions into other countries, that had killed people that didn't need to die, Benghazi being one, Libya being another. She was an atrocious Secretary of State, and I think she only got that position because she helped Obama win.
My boy, have a good smell.
So if you put your mindset into racism like that, then everything you see, everything you touch is racism. This book is racist. This microphone is racist. This camera is racist. Why? Because it was built by white men, of course. Something like that. It's actually probably built in China, but that's okay. It's racist because it makes total sense, right? Everything that ever happened to you that was bad, that was negative, that made you feel sad, probably racist. That's what they outline. Everything in there. The first 5 or 6 pages outlines this first tenet. Primes you for the idea that everything and everyone is racist. It's normal. It's ordinary. Everybody's racist. Everybody, you know what? You're racist just because. And you need to be trained not to be racist because racism is ordinary, according to them. Of course, by their philosophy, it'll never go away then, will it? Ever? No, never mind judging people by their character. Skin color is more important, clearly. According to their book, according to critical race theory. This is the default position of critical race theorists. They see everything through a racial lens. So imagine doing it yourself. Imagine every slight you saw from a person of color, every gouge, every insult, every time you got called a cracker, every time somebody brought up race in a conversation. Racism everywhere. But the thing is, when you create a culture around race, where you adopt and hone a racist slur into the very bedrock of your music, your culture, I can see why you'd think that way. It's not that hard to envision. But let's get on to Tenant 2. Tenant 2 is an interesting one because it assumes one thing, and this is where Marxism dips into critical race theory. It assumes that white over color ascendancy is a utility of our culture. Now let me explain that. That means that white people will always rise up above everyone else, according to them. It is a part of the culture.
Nonsense.
Never mind that other people don't have this problem, right? It's clearly because, this is written in America, so their American lens is on full. They must assume that because we're the majority, therefore, the culture is built to prop up white people. When you think and surround yourself with everything is racist, Tenet 2 is easy to prove. All you have to do is look at your boss. Is he white? Oh, yeah, he is. Oh, well, then that's racism. He got there because he's white. Had nothing to do with their merits or been there 20 years or whatever. No, it's because he's white. It clearly is because he's white. That is the frame of the critical race theory. And Tenet 2 doesn't go that far. It means that all whites will always be above everyone else. The intelligence community, schools, presidency. I mean, blacks voted for another straight white male, old fart, senile, probably pedophile. I mean, if everything's along racial lines, clearly this guy must be the right one, even though he's said egregiously racist things and done egregiously racist things and put in bills that were egregiously racist, like the crime bill. Did you guys forget that? You vote against your own self-interest. It's amazing. This great specter of white supremacy is devolved from seeing everything along racial lines. That's where it starts. We ruled this land with a codified doctrine and an iron fist. What's amazing to me is the thing they don't realize. They have just codified white supremacy within their own book. Everything is racist. You must think upon racial lines. And the whole system is made to raise white people to the top. They just stated whites are supreme. This is white supremacy from the opposite view. Think about it. White supremacists say that we're supreme, well, blah, 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 whatever. They think upon racial lines, but they put themselves in the superior position. Critical race theorists, the wonderful people here, whites are supreme, they own everything, what systems of white suppression, cops are bad, blah, 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 blah. But they put themselves in the victim stance. So here you have the whites are supreme but superior, whites are supreme but inferior. Critical race theorists are white supremacists. Isn't that amazing? Tenet 2 just proves that they have created and perpetuated white supremacy. Because they assume and put forth that the utility of culture within the United States, they're very specific about that. Because in other countries, they can't prove it. But because United States, therefore slavery, therefore white supremacy. They're white supremacists. Anyone that believes this cultural thing of critical race theorists is a white supremacist because it is part of their tenets. Tenet number 2. Tenet number 1, everything is racist. Tenet number 2, the culture works for whites. How could you not be a white supremacist at that point? So here's what's interesting, and I thought it was quite fun. They qualify this position with "most would agree" in their statement when they're talking about how culture builds and perpetuates white people. Most would agree. No, they wouldn't. Most would not agree. But they state it as an appeal to popularity to justify their bigotry. It's an amazing statement. So let's get on to in the form of the first tenet. Being colorblind, ignoring race, judging people by their character, not the color of their skin, the thing that MLK said, not caring what anyone's race is, as I put it, is what makes racism ordinary. So the perpetuation, the objective, I'm not sure which word I'm looking for here, the effort to ignore race on every line is what makes racism ordinary, makes racism everywhere. The negation of race as a value is racist in their view because they value race. It's a value structure oppositional statement. That's what it is. They value race. We don't. Therefore, we're the racists because we don't value race the same as they do. But they're also white supremacists, so why should I fucking care? They think I'm better than they are anyways. Despite my background, despite everything I've been through, I'm better than them. According to this little book right here. Tenant 2, remember? Tenant 2. What's very interesting, I think, is the... they use a psychic power type statement in Tenant 2 that culture is controlled, and they use psychic attacks to make you think that you're inferior. It's like ghosts and demons control your behavior. But in this case, it's racism and bigotry control your behavior because everything is racist and everything is ordinary. So they assume that you're trying not to be racist because they want to give you that out from the original sin. This powerful specter of white supremacy psychically controls the minds of anyone not white. That's what they say in the second tenet. You're controlled psychically. And that's what perpetuates white supremacy. Never mind that they've outlined white supremacy for you, created a value structure around race, and then perpetuated it. No, it's psychic manipulation. I'm not kidding. It's in here. Psychic control of race, by race. We make everyone think they're inferior because of their race. Through culture, through movies, through whatever. Because why not, I guess. It reminds me of an Alex Jones level conspiracy of taking psychedelic drugs and everybody seeing the same vision of aliens from another dimension and controlling your thoughts and making a cabal for the overthrow of the earth or whatever. I don't know. Weird shit. The other theory in the thesis of this critical race theorist book is social construction. It's borrowed from a flawed proposition from feminists when faced the idea that evolution happened in our brains. This led psychologists to couple evolutionary thoughts to understand how the mind works. Feminists didn't like that, so they created a alternative theory, is how I saw it phrased once. Alternative to evolution, called the blank slate, meaning that you were programmed to be racist. Well, critical race theory borrowed that and applied it to race, saying that race is a social construct. That you having a different skin tone, body type, bone structure, and so forth, is not biological. No. You know, the higher risk of heart disease, all that fun stuff. It's not biological, according to them. No, it's an invention of Western society, and since Western society is white, clearly that's racist too. No, see, evolution is a white thought. It's a Western philosophy. It's clearly a white philosophy, according to these people.
To each his own.
They skip over pretty much what's understood about evolution and favor social programming, because then they can manipulate data to show you that, yes, things are racist. And everything's racist because look at the race. Racism, race. That's all they say in this. It's really annoying. And you can tell I'm getting kind of perturbed at this point. But I read through the first chapter, a whole 20 pages, and I wanted to punch somebody in the face at the end of it. That's how this book made me feel. It's a great book if you want to kill yourself. It seriously is. It'll give you a view of the world through the lens of a crazy racist person with a lot of power. Anyways, that is their third tenet, if it were. I describe it as a loose tenet, I guess, is that the social construction is a thing, and that's what perpetuates racism, not biology, because, you know, skin tone is clearly not biological. That's why two white people can have sex and have a black baby, I'm sure. It has nothing to do with the, well, that's an old phrase. Amazon delivery driver. Let's go with that one, because you can't say milkman anymore. There's no people dropping milk off to the house anymore. It doesn't happen. Anyways, the fourth tenet. The fourth tenet is racialization and stereotyping. Stereotypes exist for a reason. Some of them are funny, and in context, it depends how they're used. They can be very, 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 very offensive. Very offensive. White stereotypes included. And there's plenty of them. There's plenty of movies out there that make fun of white stereotypes, and they're pretty fucking funny. Some of them, not so much. They reached a little bit too far.
It seems to me that you're the judge here.
I tend to not like stereotypes. Some of them kind of fit, some of them don't. It all depends. It helps you give a very surface level view of another culture. Not necessarily another race, mind you, because that's how stereotypes work. For example, the stereotypical British person is a posh, upstanding, stick-up-their-ass person. At least in the United States. That's the way we view them, because we kicked their ass out of our country and took this country over. That's not true, now is it? There are very down-to-earth people over there. Sargon comes to mind. But then you see their British politics. Aside from Boris Johnson, I would say. The rest of them probably have a massive stick up their ass. There's a guy with glasses, can't remember his name, that has no problem going up to SJWs and trying to discuss something with them as they scream in his face. I thought it was pretty impressive. But he's the type of British posh person that Americans usually think of. That is a stereotype. Is it racist because I'm making the stereotype of another white race? British is not a race, by the way. British is a nationality. Anyways, the fourth tenet about stereotyping means that all stereotypes are racist. It doesn't matter if it's culture or geography or nationality that you're stereotyping, but it is clearly a racist position.
Their plan is clear now.
To be clear, stereotypes exist for a reason. But they're not necessarily meant to be racist. It's meant to be a shortcut to understand somebody's culture. Make an assumption. Now, if you tend to use that to be an asshole, that's on you, not the stereotype. The stereotypes, generally correct. I had an argument with one of my good friends about stereotyping. He claimed that stereotypes were racist, and he was talking about Karate Kid and how Mr. Miyagi had an accent, spoke with an accent. And since he's half Japanese, everybody used to make fun of him in Utah because they're assholes. And make fun of him using that accent, thinking he spoke like that. And I think his mom did. I don't remember. It was a discussion like years ago, like 3 or 4 years ago. Man, I was so mad at him too. Anyways, now if you watch Karate Kid, yeah, he speaks with an accent. But do people from another nationality, not race, nationality, whose language differs from English significantly, attempt to speak English, but have an accent because of the origination of their language? We make fun of it all the time. There was a great meme, I would like some Coke, and they're talking about Coca-Cola, but the way she said Coke was Coke. It sounded like she said, I'd like some, yeah, anyways. That meme instantly comes to mind because she is teaching English to Japanese-speaking people and mispronounces a word, and everybody's like, oh, that's funny, because that's how you say that word. So whose stereotype are you making fun of? Their inability to speak English as effective as you because you grew up in it? Or your own? Because that word doesn't mean that thing the way you're saying it. You might want to not say it that way.
To understand what I mean, just hear what I say.
The final tenet is the assumptions that white people know nothing about oppression. We have never been oppressed in our lives. Never mind that Polish Jews were taken into internment camps and beaten the living fuck out of and then murdered. Yeah, those Jews were clearly not white. This is where Marxism sprinkles its shit all over everything in this thing. The final tenet is that there is an oppressor and an oppressed. The whites are the oppressors, the oppressed are everybody else that's not white. This is called cultural Marxism by anybody that really cares. I once had a discussion with a prominent black person in a very high seat of power, tried to tell me that Marxism was a Jewish conspiracy theory. That it's this dynamics of power and the Jews made it up because reasons. When really, cultural Marxism is the philosophy of the oppressed and the oppressor, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, but put into racial lenses. That's, or male versus female. Wherever you have a dichotomy of two things, you can say one's oppressed, one's the oppressor, and peace, you're out. This book paints that picture. It says that all white people are racist. It's created by racists. They've created a thought process to where all people that are white are now racist. Period. There's no way around it. You can't be it. Tenant 1, everything is racist. Tenant 2, white supremacy. Therefore, racism everywhere. Therefore, whites will always oppress you. They've set it up right at the beginning. All within the first 20 pages. This is what's in store for you in this book. They prime it at the very beginning. So, to recap, let me just read what my notes say here. They're not too bad. I probably could have proofread them a little bit, but you know what? Who cares? According to the book, racism is ordinary, as stated in Tenant 1. That means racism is literally everywhere. Only people of color can experience racism. And it's always white people, or the society that is built by whites and for whites, is to blame. So society is to blame for any racism that you experience, and it's the white people that made it. So therefore, all white people are responsible for the bad things that happen to you, because racism is everywhere. Always. This is a primer to say that whites are responsible for all things. This is like racial cultural warfare, if you want to get down to it. Their blame, it's not, you can't blame your own actions. Your own actions aren't considered. Accountability is not considered. That would be blaming the victim, according to this book. They point to the police community. They call it a community rather than a job. It's a community of people that are out there to oppress you. And that's how they can prove that they're oppressed. 1,000 people, on average, are killed, justly or unjustly, every year by the police. 1,000. Out of 350 million people, 1,000 die every year from a police shooting. 2/3 of those deaths are minorities. Unironically, 2/3 of the people committing violent crimes are also minorities. But statistics don't matter. The system was built to oppress. What choice do they have but to fight the racism? Because racism is everywhere, don't forget, and white supremacy. Therefore, the police are a part of the system, the culture that oppresses them. That's why you see them bashing things out. That's why the Black Lives Matter movement that owns and operates under these tenants attack cops. They're a part of the system of white supremacy. They believe it to be true. It is a tenet of faith. There are 5 tenets, the 5 pillars, tenets of faith.
We're finished. And it's your fault.
I want you to keep in mind that this was being taught at the federal level at our government. Trump banned it recently. This is being taught in every university everywhere. If you go into a psychology or sociology degree, they're making this required reading at this point. Diversity programs are centered around the thoughts out of this book. Diversity inclusion offices are centered around the thoughts in this book. And I have a list of articles that I got from a chief diversity officer as recommended reading to be an ally to fight oppression.
The class is finished today.
I hope you enjoyed this. That's just chapter 1. Chapter 2, I got in a couple pages and I started cracking up laughing because, wow, they really take those tenets and roll with it. Chapter 2 discusses the themes and how you can apply critical race theory to your life. It's atrocious, and it's just as good as chapter 1. So the 5 tenets will come up again, and in here there's some fun. We're going to do some exercises. They got some exercises in here that we can try.
And it looks as if we're going to have to go through the whole thing again.
I hope you enjoyed this video. This is chapter 1 of this wonderful book, Critical Race Theory. I hope you found it as atrocious as I do, and now you can understand the basic tenets, how they see everything through the lens of race. How tenet 1, let's remind ourselves, tenet 1, everything is racist. Racism is ordinary. Tenet 2, white supremacy. Tenet 2 is the white supremacist movement, saying that everything is racist and white people build cultures to lift themselves up. Tenet 3, race is a social construct. Race exists as a thought in your mind, not the color of your skin, although they definitely point to the color of your skin to prove that racism is there. So biology doesn't exist, but it does. But only when it applies to their thoughts, because racism. Tenet 4, racialization and stereotyping, accents, stereotypes, all that stuff exists to perpetuate racism. It exists there because reasons. And finally, tenet 5, the oppressed and the oppressor, Marxism applied to race. Tenet 5, the greatest tenet of all. Because you're black, you'll always be oppressed. Because you're white, you'll always be the oppressor. Therefore, the blacks need to fight their oppressors. That is chapter 1. That is being taught in school. Now you know why Trump banned it. And you guys still call him a racist, even though he just banned the most racist piece of shit thing out on the planet. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll catch you next time.